Hi everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered where your mental images come from and why they're so tied up with your feelings? Well, this new research has a mind-bending idea. Imagine being able to picture something in your mind, like your favorite vacation spot or a plan for your day. That is mental imagery. For a long time, scientists thought this ability grew out of our senses, especially our sight. But what if the real origin story is much older and much deeper, connected to something we don't always think about our own body? This paper dives into the big evolutionary question of how mental imagery actually started. It challenges the common idea that it is just an extra feature tacked onto our visual system. Instead, it suggests that the very first sparks of this offline simulation didn't come from seeing, but from feeling. Think about it. If you are about to do something like grab a hot pan, your body feels that potential danger even before you fully see it. This research proposes that our internal body signals, what scientists call interoception, are the true foundation. Interoception is basically our sense of what is going on inside our body, like our heart rate, our breathing, our hunger, and even subtle feelings of comfort or unease. The scientists here are saying that our ability to simulate or imagine things probably started as a way to predict and evaluate what our body would experience. What felt good, what felt bad, what was safe, what was dangerous. This is because outcomes that matter to us are usually tied to our body's well-being. You wouldn't rank food options based on how they look alone, right? You'd consider how they taste, how they make you feel afterward. They looked at the evolution of brains and found evidence that this interoceptive way of simulating things was around even before complex visual systems developed. So, the earliest form of our simulation ability was likely about predicting how our body would act and feel. Then, as vision became more sophisticated, it was gradually added to make these simulations more detailed and specific. The really interesting part is that vision only became the dominant player in mental imagery much later, particularly in primates. This happened after a long period when mammals, for about 100 to 150 million years, were mostly nocturnal. During this time, their vision wasn't as great, and they relied more on other senses. This nocturnal bottleneck allowed the underlying simulation system, rooted in interoception, to develop and mature without needing super sharp vision. So when primates re-emerged into a diurnal world and their visual systems expanded again, this enhanced vision was basically recruited to add detail and precision to a simulation system that was already built to predict bodily outcomes. It wasn't that vision created imagery, but rather that vision was added to existing internal simulation abilities to solve tricky problems of discrimination. This leads to a really significant implication for how we understand the link between emotions and imagery. The common idea is that imagery amplifies emotions, like turning a mild feeling into a strong one. But if imagery and emotion come from the same ancient interoceptive system, they're actually co-generated. They're like two sides of the same coin, formed together from the start. This explains why intense emotional distress can sometimes completely wipe out someone's ability to imagine things, a condition called acquired aphantasia. If imagery was just a neutral visual process that emotions later amplified, you wouldn't expect an emotional shock to destroy the entire capacity. But if they're built from the same base, then damage to that base can affect both. So, the core idea is that mental imagery isn't just about seeing in your mind. It is a fundamental part of an ancient system that evolved to help us predict and evaluate what is best for our bodies. Vision became a star player later, but the heart of the system is our body's own internal feelings. Let's dig a bit deeper into this evolutionary tale. The researchers are saying that even before eyes evolved, nervous systems were already tracking and predicting internal body states. This basic monitoring of our insides is incredibly ancient. Image-forming vision, the kind that helps us see detailed objects, came much later. Early vision was more about orienting responses, like turning towards light rather than recognizing specific objects. It was directly linked to motor actions, helping creatures move around. Interoception, on the other hand, acted as a sort of internal guide, influencing what we pay attention to and respond to. The key adaptive advantage of this simulation ability, whether internal or external, is that it helps us avoid costly mistakes. Imagine a hunter needing to decide whether to pursue prey behind a bush. Simulating the action and its potential consequences, like expending energy or getting injured beforehand, is much safer and more efficient than actually doing it. This simulation system at its core needs to know why an outcome matters. And that is where interoception is crucial. A visual cue like a predator is only significant because of what it means for your body, the fear, the need to escape, the exhaustion. Exteroceptive senses like vision give us information about the world. But interoception gives us information about our internal state and how the world impacts it. The mechanism for this early simulation is thought to involve something called efference copy. Basically, when your brain sends a command to your body to move, a copy of that command is sent to sensory areas. This helps the brain anticipate what the sensory consequences of that movement will be. Once this anticipation process could be separated from actually performing the action, we got offline simulation. So, the very first simulations were likely about our bodies executing actions and how that would feel. This embodied action simulation is the evolutionary ancestor of the complex mental imagery we experience today. Visual information was then gradually integrated to provide more specific details. Think of it like this. Interoception provided the basic emotional color and motivation, and then senses like vision added the sharp details and distinct features. This creates bound representations, where sensory information and internal bodily evaluation are inherently linked. The paper also highlights the impact of the nocturnal bottleneck. For millions of years, early mammals lived in low-light conditions. This meant their visual systems were less important for survival, and they focused on other senses like smell. During this time, the brain regions involved in memory, navigation, and simulation, especially in the hippocampus, were developing significantly, but not necessarily because of vision. This period allowed the fundamental architecture of simulation, driven by bodily states and motivation, to become advanced. When vision later experienced a boom in primates, it was integrated into this already established interoception-focused system. This hypothesis is supported by evidence from rodents. Even though their vision isn't as advanced as ours, they show rich offline replay of experiences. And this replay is strongly organized around reward value. This suggests that the simulation system prioritizes motivational and bodily outcomes, not just visual details. The paper also mentions that REM sleep, the stage of sleep characterized by vivid dreams, likely evolved during this nocturnal bottleneck. This suggests that offline simulation and dreaming are deeply connected and evolved to consolidate survival-relevant information, driven by motivation rather than just sensory input. So, if interoception was the ancient foundation, why did vision become so prominent in our mental imagery, especially in primates? The researchers suggest it was to solve a discriminability problem, as life got more complex, especially with social interactions and navigation. Our simulation system needed a way to tell apart many subtle differences that all felt somewhat similar internally. Imagine spotting something in the distance. Your body might react with a general sense of alertness. But is it a predator, a potential mate, or just a rustling leaf? Interoception alone can't always tell you the precise nature of the threat or opportunity. This is where vision, with its incredible ability to capture fine details, color, movement, and complex shapes, becomes invaluable. So, as primates evolved into social, arboreal creatures, their visual systems flourished. This enhanced vision was then integrated into the existing simulation machinery, allowing for more precise mental simulations. The hippocampus plays a key role here, helping to recombine elements from different past experiences to create novel potential future scenarios, now enriched with detailed visual information. Essentially, vision provided the high resolution needed to distinguish between situations that might have similar internal bodily signals, but require very different actions. Think of it as adding a high-definition lens to an already functioning internal simulator. This evolutionary journey explains why our mental images, when we have them, often feel so visual. It is not that vision created the system, but that a highly developed visual system was recruited by an older interoception-based simulation system to meet the demands of a complex world. Now, what does this mean for us practically, and what are the implications for current research? This new framework challenges some established ideas. For instance, Lang's bioinformational theory proposed that autonomic responses, those bodily signals, are downstream effects of mental imagery. The interoceptive origin theory flips this on its head. It suggests that imagery and bodily responses are co-generated. This is why, as mentioned earlier, emotional disturbances can completely eliminate imagery. It is not that the emotion is acting on the image, but that the underlying system for both is disrupted. If imagery vividness is tied to our interoception, then differences in how vividly we imagine things might stem from differences in our underlying bodily sensing systems. The paper points to emerging evidence linking imagery capacity to conditions like dysautonomia, which affects autonomic nervous system function. and hypermobility spectrum disorders. It also suggests that aphantasia, the inability to form mental images, might not just be a visual problem. The study mentions research showing that people with aphantasia also have difficulty with motor imagery, even when it is not voluntary. This points to a broader simulation deficit rooted in the interoceptive architecture. The researchers propose specific predictions. At the comparative level, they predict that the complexity of a species' autonomic nervous system will be a better predictor of its simulation capacity than the sophistication of its visual system. In humans, they predict that brain activity in areas related to interoception, like the anterior insula, should precede activity in visual areas when generating an image. They also predict that direct interventions targeting the autonomic nervous system, like slow breathing exercises, could influence imagery vividliness at the moment it is being formed, not just afterwards. This is a crucial distinction. This brings us to the profound implications for understanding emotions and imagery. The conventional emotional amplifier theory suggests images become more emotional, but this new view proposes that emotions and imagery are two aspects of the same process. Emotions themselves are seen as the brain's active construction of meaning from bodily signals. When mental simulation emerged from this same system, it naturally incorporated this emotional and evaluative grounding. They are, in essence, born together. This explains why different emotional states are linked to specific types of imagery. For example, depression, which involves blunted interoceptive signals, may lead to difficulties generating positive imagery. Anxiety, on the other hand, with its hypervigilant interoceptive monitoring, can fuel intrusive threat imagery. The bound nature of imagery, meaning sensory and interoceptive components are integrated, also has implications for therapies. Interventions that directly target the bodily state, like mindfulness or somatic focus therapies, are likely effective because they work on the core construction of the representation rather than trying to change an already formed image. In conclusion, this research presents a compelling new narrative for the origin of mental imagery. It argues that interoception, our sense of our internal bodily state, is the primordial architect of offline simulation. Vision, while incredibly important today, was a later addition. This means mental imagery is fundamentally tied to our bodily well-being and our emotional landscape. It's not just about creating pictures in our head. It's about our brain's ancient and ongoing effort to predict and navigate the world in a way that keeps our bodies safe and thriving. This perspective not only offers a powerful evolutionary explanation, but also deepens our understanding of conditions like aphantasia and the intricate dance between our minds and our bodies. What do you think about this interoceptive origin of mental imagery? Does it change how you think about your own mental pictures and feelings? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this exploration fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more mind-bending science, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the human psyche. Until next time, stay curious.